conclude festivities in this hour, and the final word will go to Karen from the Buckeye State. Hey, Karen, welcome aboard. Good morning.
Hi, Jeff. I only had one question. I'm wondering why all these politicians, these corrupt politicians, aren't in jail.
Because we have a double standard of justice, Karen.
Oh, well, I understand that. I mean, they'll put American people in jail for less infractions than treason, but all these corrupt politicians are committing acts of treason against our country.
Well, here's my hope about that, and I think you're right. There's so many corrupt politicians that need to be prosecuted that are not being prosecuted. Former Obama officials. The list is almost endless. We just got to hope that the president wins re-election and can either get Bill Barr going or bring in a new attorney general. And we need to continue to clean house at the Department of Justice to get in people. They're going to put our country first as opposed to partisan politics. Thank you, Karen. Thanks to all of our great viewers on Real America's Voice. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Any thoughts, comments, ideas, suggestions, email me at jeff@wgso.com. More coming your way on the radio right here on WGS.
Wake up every morning with just the news. All the news and none of the noise. Just the News AM starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. So glad that you are here this bright Monday morning. We got just over 2 weeks before Election Day, as you all know. I can't think of anyone better than all things Trump expert, a victory bundler also for the Trump National Finance Team, Lena Epstein. She joins me. Lena.
Good morning, Carrie. Thank you so much for having me. Great to see you.
Good to see you. So I should mention, Lena, that for our viewers, you are also the co-chair of Trump's successful Michigan campaign. Now, this was a very tight race. To remind our viewers, Obama won Michigan in 2012 by 9.5%, and then Trump, in a very nail-biter scenario, won in 2016 by 0.3%. Now, the polls in Michigan right now have Trump down by 7.2%, according to the aggregate of Real Clear Politics. What's going on the ground that you're seeing in Michigan?
Sure, and I will remind you and your viewers again that at this point, a few weeks before the election in 2016, polls were also indicating that Michigan was down. We did have a historic success in 2016. Michigan went red for President Trump. We went red as a state for the first time at the presidential level since the 80s. And I'm seeing this incredible groundswell, Carrie, occurring in Michigan that is similar to that of 2016. And we speak of, at times, the silent voter or the silent majority. Having been part of 2016 and now this marvelous race in 2020, it is clear to me that Michigan is very much in play and has a very, very, very good chance of successfully reelecting Donald Trump for a second term.
Now, we're seeing a big conflict right now between your governor, Gretchen Whitmer, and the president. There's been so much back and forth. There was a plot that the FBI uncovered and exposed, a plot to allegedly kidnap the governor and put her on a trial from a band of people who were taking it on their own shoulders to do this and illegally making a plot to kidnap the governor. And then you have the governor saying that it's the president who inspired this, and the president saying, no, I didn't inspire it, and you should be grateful that I stopped it. What does this do for undecided voters on the ground there in Michigan to have the president saying one thing and then the governor saying the other thing?
Fortunate that people would conspire to hurt anybody in politics, whether that person's a Democrat or a Republican. President Trump has made the nation safer. So in terms of the appeal to the undecided voter, I would say President Trump has spent the last 4 years securing our economy, securing our border for future generations of American citizenry. So for the undecided voters, I would say a vote for Donald Trump is a vote for economic growth in this country. It's a vote for security and freedom. And it's also a vote to send a message to our friends and foe across the world that America will do whatever is necessary to ensure American democracy and freedom.
And in terms of the back and forth, a lot of people are frustrated by shutdowns. They're frustrated by mask mandates. But then you have a lot of folks, especially women or maybe some suburban voters, who say, well, we should be more cautious. Where do you think they're going to come down when they're talking about seeing Gretchen Whitmer and her mandates, which, according to the Michigan State Supreme Court, were going against your state laws, that she overreached. She went outside the bounds of what she's allowed to do, according to the Michigan Supreme Court. Is that message being told? Do the people of Michigan realize that what she was doing, according to the Supreme Court there in the state, was wrong?
I would say certainly yes. The Michigan voter is an incredibly educated, involved voter. We are paying attention to the behaviors of Gretchen Whitmer, and it's as a business owner myself and a job creator, it's a bit unfathomable to watch Gretchen Whitmer restrict thousands of businesses without really the credentials to make those decisions. So it's a wonderful moment for the Michigan Supreme Court. It's a wonderful moment for Michigan citizens and arguably citizens across the U.S.
Let's talk about finance, since you are a bundler there on President Trump's national finance team. I reported over the weekend, we looked again at small versus large donors. The president has a big advantage over Biden when it comes to small donors are more likely to vote. How did you take that when you saw that the Trump campaign is outperforming the Biden campaign when it comes to small donors?
I was thrilled and not surprised, but I want to say something very special about you, Carrie Sheffield. Your writing on this topic is extraordinary. I hope that everybody in America has the opportunity to read the article that you wrote about small dollar donors, Trump versus Biden. Right now, it is true. It is a fact. It is confirmed that small dollar donors are of a larger volume Team Trump as compared to Team Biden. And what that tells me as a bundler, as a fundraiser, as an activist, as a mother, tells me we have a very, very good chance of reelecting Donald Trump for president in a couple of weeks. I feel very strongly that it's going to happen for us.
And what are you hearing from the people, the donors that you're speaking to? Do they feel like the president has done the right thing when it comes to coronavirus? Obviously, the Harris campaign was trying to say that Trump did the wrong thing, and then her campaign got infected. But these donors, are they saying that the Trump campaign or the Trump White House did the right thing on the coronavirus?
Certainly, the donors of small dollar contributions and high dollar contributions are saying alike how grateful they are that President Trump acted so expeditiously to protect Americans amidst this global pandemic. The voters and the donors are actively involved in this president's campaign, and it's going to certainly inform the election result.
And what are you seeing in terms of other issues that donors, what are the top issues you're seeing from the donors?
It's always coming down, Carrie, to economic growth. What's happening in Michigan's economy, and what has President Trump done to make it easier to do business? I can say that Donald Trump has made it a lot easier, more viable to be a business owner in this country. And I think his economic record speaks volumes to not just what he achieved in the last 4 years, but what could lie ahead in terms of future economic growth. Trump has an extraordinary record of attracting international businesses to want to invest on our soil. He has a record of making us energy independent so that we don't need to rely on our foes overseas for oil and products that we need. He is a man of courage, a man of integrity, and certainly primed and ready.
All right, we got to leave it right there. Lena Epstein, we appreciate it. Stick with us. We're going to global affairs next. And welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. We're going to get the latest on our headlines from Joe Weber, our Just the News news editor. Welcome, Joe. So, Joe, we got some big news coming out of Iran. What's the latest?
Well, the United Nations Security Council on Sunday decided that they were going to lift the arms embargo that's been on Iran for more than a decade. And that's disconcerting news for the United States, who's tried for many, many years to try to keep under control the rogue nation and their supply of nuclear and ballistic military missile weapons. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said today that anybody who tries to continue to sell weapons to them will get hit with harder sanctions.
And the UN is trying to say that the U.S. doesn't have anything to say about this because we pulled out of the 2015 Iran deal. Do you think that the U.S. is going to win this fight with the UN?
Well, two things. One, they also, President Trump has pulled out of the United Nations Security Council, so that limits their power in that situation too. And in addition, yes, they pulled out of the Iran arms deal, and Pompeo has said he's tried to enforce those who have still remained part of that nuclear arms deal to enforce that rule, but it's going to be very difficult once you pull out of it to tell all those who have stayed in that they have to not sell arms to Iran.
And we got a clip I want to play and get your thoughts. Let's roll that real quick. It's Pompeo talking with a leader from Saudi Arabia.
Ever since President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and King Abdul Aziz al-Assad first laid the foundation for our ties 75 years ago, Saudi Arabia has been an important partner in this volatile region. The relationship between our people has grown since that time, and it's distinguished today by deep and steady cooperation between our two nations. We hope Saudi Arabia will consider normalizing its relationships as well, and we want to thank them for the assistance they've had in the success of the Abraham Accords so far. We hope, too, that the kingdom will encourage the Palestinian side to return to dialogue and negotiation with Israel.
We are going to discuss our joint efforts to promote regional stability and security and address common threats, including the Iranian regime continuing destabilizing behavior. The Iranian regime continues to provide financial and material support to terrorist groups, including in Yemen, where the Houthis have launched more than 300 Iranian-made ballistic missiles and drones towards the kingdom. Their development of their nuclear program and ballistic missiles and their malign activities represent a grave danger to the region and the world. We are both committed to counter and deter Iran's destabilizing behavior.
Part of why they were basically co-signing and helping get the Abraham Accords, the historic peace deal in the Middle East, was because they want the United States to step up on Iran. Do you think the Saudi Arabians could push the UN here?
Well, that has been the United States' biggest ally in the United Nations. And as you know, earlier today, Saudi Arabia was very much against the UN Council's decision to lift the arms ban. Saudi Arabia has been a very good friend of the Trump administration. They have sought efforts to try to curb Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon and other ballistic missiles. They've worked with the Abraham Accord, as Secretary Pompeo just said. So I think a lot of the heavy lifting, or if there's going to be any effort at all, it's going to try to come through Iran.
Now let's move to another topic here while we still got you. John Ratcliffe, we just heard over on Fox Business with Maria Bartiromo. He's the director of national intelligence. He said that the information that the New York Post reported about Hunter Biden and the news that reportedly the vice president at the time, Joe Biden, met with someone from Burisma, that this information that was contained in emails from a hard drive, from a laptop captivated by someone who said that they turned it in from a repair shop, that all of this is not Russian disinformation. This is coming directly from the Director of National Intelligence. Do you think that this is going to settle things? I mean, my answer probably would be no. How do you think Democrats are going to receive this news from Ratcliffe saying that this is not disinformation?
Well, I mean, it will be taken with a lot of skepticism. Adam Schiff, the House Intelligence Committee chairman, put that out this weekend, that it was disinformation. But here's the more important thing and more interesting thing about this. Senator Ron Johnson, who's the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, he just said to the FBI, have you been investigating this? We have information that you have. Just tell us, is this valid? Have you been investigating? There's some information that suggests that there's already a grand jury hearing into the validity of the email. So I think the best way to legitimize these is through the FBI coming out and saying so. And that's the path that Ron Johnson has pursuing. And I think that's probably going to be the most effective, if anything is effective at all.
Well, and we even saw the Biden campaign itself acknowledging that this meeting could have possibly happened. They said that if there was a meeting, it could have been cursory. And their first 1.0 answer was, oh, there was no meeting. We checked the official records. The 2.0 response is, oh, there may have been a meeting, but it would have been off the books. It would have been, quote, cursory. Do you think we're going to see more statements and more confirmations of this information?
Well, I think that the FBI, I think at this point, is compelled to let the American public know whether it is indeed investigating it. You know, how long ago were you informed about this hard drive and the laptop? What do you know? Do you think it's true? One point that Johnson made is that if you have to let me know, because they would receive the whistleblower information on it too. Is this whistleblower lying to Congress? Now, you know, I expect the Biden campaign will just continue to push back on this. Just weeks to go before the election, and they will fight back on this as hard as they can.
Now, when we're talking about the actual story itself, it seems that the person who delivered the laptop, that he said he was legally blind and he couldn't see if it was Hunter Biden. That seems a little bit disconcerting, wouldn't you say?
It does. It just raises some speculation about that and how it got into the hands of Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon, who were, you know, are and were close to the Trump administration. Then it goes to the New York Post. It raises a bit of skepticism. As you know, it was banned from Facebook and Twitter because they argued that such information, if it's possibly hacked, cannot be put on the social media platforms. Now they've since lifted that ban, but you know, let's just find out if it's indeed hacked. Let's just find out if this was indeed Hunter Biden's laptop and his hard drive, and then we can go from there. And I think, you know, most of the information lies in the hands of the FBI at this point.
Well, and certainly we noted the double standard that the social media networks had about information that should not have been obtained, i.e. the president's tax returns that the New York Times released, and they did not put any restrictions on putting that information out there. Real quick, what do you think this means politically? Do you think it's these October surprise? Do you think it's too late at this point? I mean, the favorabilities of Joe Biden compared to the favorabilities of Hillary Clinton, this narrative of corruption had been around the Clintons. These clouds of suspicions had been around for decades. Joe Biden had a more clean reputation. Do you think it would be too little too late in terms of the Trump campaign and seeing what the president is saying?
Well, it's difficult to say, but the one thing that has become clear is that the Trump campaign has tried to continue the narrative that there was a lot of corruption, secret emails, secret meetings, when Secretary Clinton was in the administration, and now, with Vice President Biden, apparently, the White House has said, and so is the campaign, that whatever Joe Biden did as vice president in the Ukraine was part of U.S. foreign policy. But there's emails and other information that suggests that, his efforts to try to oust a prosecutor there for the Burisma holding company seems like, using his political influence. And
well, we'll see what happens.
The hammer on this, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see how much of this comes up during the debate. If the moderator brings it up, I think we can bet money that the president will if the moderator doesn't. Thanks.
I wouldn't bet against you.
Thanks, Joe Weber. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to talk about how to have more limited government. Is it even possible these days? Stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. So glad that you are here. Now, we just saw the government grew to a record size this year. We just saw a record deficit reported of $3.1 trillion. That's bigger than the size of government quite often. And the big question is what to do about it. Rick Manning is president of Americans for Limited Government. He's joining us to talk about this. Rick,
thanks for having me, Carrie.
So, Rick, there's a lot of talk right now about stimulus. The White House, specifically the Treasury Secretary, we just had a spokeswoman on last week about this. They're really pushing to get some type of additional coronavirus stimulus spending. Nancy Pelosi wants even more. And so the disagreement here is about the size of the package. Senate Republicans are less warm to the whole idea in general. What's your read on all this?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. The economy was going great, and then the coronavirus hit, the Chinese virus hit, and essentially the decision was made for the government to stop the economy. And it created a massive amount of unemployment. It created a lot of businesses that weren't able to even exist anymore. And so there was a rationale for going in and trying to help out on a temporary basis. What the Senate's trying to do, and I support the Senate proposal if we have to have something, because it's $500 billion, which is a lot of money. Let me be clear, that's a lot of money. But it really focuses on those people who are being left behind because their state governments won't open up. States like Michigan, states like New York, states like California. And their small businesses are being destroyed, and they've got the highest unemployment rates. So consequently, Congress, the Senate, the Republican Senate is actually trying to help the blue state businesses and the blue state workers at a time when Nancy Pelosi's essentially trying to bail out the blue state governors and public employee unions. That's the real fight. That's what the big difference in money is. And quite honestly, we ought to be taking a hard look next fiscal year, in terms of cutting everything back by 10% and not having any supplemental stimulus, and just really rolling back government by about 10% to be able to give us a chance to catch our breaths.
Well, Rick, and I heard what you said about a price tag for Senate Republicans around $500 billion. That's way lower than what we're hearing from Nancy Pelosi. Do you think Mitch McConnell would block a bill if it gets somewhere more in the neighborhood of $2 or $2.5 trillion?
Well, Nancy Pelosi was putting $3 trillion, $3+ trillion on the table. That's what passed the House. Then she went down to $2.2 trillion, but said, "Oh, we're going to pass the rest of it later. We're just moving the timeline back." So she still has a $3 trillion plus plan with a lot of other things in it that have nothing to do with the COVID virus. So, I think Mitch McConnell's made clear that if he's got an offer on the table, that's what they're going to do. They're going to do it this week. The Senate Democrats may not let it come to the floor because of the filibuster, but the Republicans are going to make it clear that they're willing to put money into COVID research. They're willing to put money into masks. They're willing to put money into testing. They're willing to put money to help extend unemployment help. They're willing to do a lot of things with that $500 billion. I want to put that into perspective for you, Carrie. We will bring in probably around $3.1 trillion this year, in this last fiscal year. And you know what? When you think about the money that they're talking about spending, that's 1/6 of our entire revenues in a year. That's what we're talking about. That's an incredible amount of money. And yet Nancy Pelosi wants to spend more than we actually bring in a year in the fourth or fifth stimulus package.
Right. So they're calling it the skinny bundle. So a smaller package that's more narrowly and targeted. But do you think this will actually pass? Pelosi says she has a deadline of tomorrow, Tuesday. Mnuchin is actually overseas. He's in the Middle East. Do you think we're going to get a deal?
I think Mitch McConnell is going to try to pass something in the Senate, and the Democrats will decide whether they want it or not. The fact of the matter is, at some point, this becomes political gamesmanship. Nancy Pelosi decides she'd rather have nothing than to not have her other priorities funded, and as a result, they're at loggerheads. And quite honestly, I don't believe that the Republicans should move and spend even more money. The package they have does exactly what needs to be done, and as it is, we're going to have to dig out from this coronavirus for a generation to make up the money that we spent on this thing. So you get right down to it, $3 trillion is a lot, and borrowing that from the Chinese is dangerous.
Rick, I want to turn to another topic here while we still have you, and this is the question of Section 230. We had the big news with the New York Post reporting about the laptop and the allegations that Vice President Biden met with someone from Burisma, and you have the Biden campaign now saying that that meeting might have happened, and if it did, it would have been a cursory meeting, though. So this news coming out was suppressed very overtly and directly by Twitter and Facebook. So you had the president saying, well, these special privileges that I'm giving to you tech companies under Section 230 that says you're a neutral, agnostic platform that's not making editorial decisions, we're going to strip away that privilege because you are engaging in editorial decisions. A lot of conservatives have said this is a good thing. We need to rebuild Section 230 and have more regulation for these tech companies. So what's your take as someone who advocates for limited government? Should Section 230, these basically hands-off approach to the tech companies, continue, or do you support more government here?
Well, I support the law, and the law says you have to be neutral and unedited to be able to have Section 230. Let me tell you what Section 230 actually does. It actually allows Twitter or Facebook or Google or anybody to have other people's copyrighted material on their pages without them having to pay for it. That's what Section 230 actually does. And so what Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Amazon, for that matter, are getting as an advantage here is they're getting the ability to use other people's content for free as part of the content they provide their users. It made sense as long as they weren't editing that content, as long as they weren't censoring that content. But now that they've gotten into the political advocacy game and they're censoring stuff, they're determining what you should see, they're determining what you can't see, they've lost the underlying, under the law, they no longer are eligible for Section 230. So this isn't a matter of regulating them, this is a matter of following the law, and they've made a decision to no longer be Section 230 compliant, and hence they should not be covered by Section 230, and they should start paying for people's copyrighted materials. And I'll tell you what, that's something they really can't afford to do.
Well, as a media company who broadcasts on these social media networks, that's kind of music to my ears, as I always like to point out to guests. There is just really a damning graph of newspaper revenues going like this and Google revenues going like this, crossing and Google surpassing news organizations. And it's the same with Facebook and Twitter, where if you go to any of these tech companies' lunches, they give free lunches. So they're literally eating the media companies' lunches. So real quick, what do you think would happen in a Biden-Harris administration on this?
Oh, Biden-Harris administration will roll over on their backs with paws in the air for Silicon Valley, and they'll do the same thing for China. The fact of the matter is, Biden-Harris is looking backwards. They're trying to relive a time when we still were naive enough to believe that people wouldn't manipulate things for political interests, or that countries like China wouldn't try to take advantage of the extraordinary trade deals we gave them. And so what you're looking at with Biden-Harris is essentially a rollback to what they consider the big good old days, when we're outsourcing our jobs and we were dependent upon 3 networks who decided what was fit to print over 22 minutes of every evening.
All right, Rick, we got to leave it right there. Thank you. Now, is artificial intelligence taking over? Stay tuned. We will let you know. Good morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. So glad that you're here. Let's talk about artificial intelligence and also specifically, what does AI mean for your money? I've got a new book here and the author is joining us. It's called AI, Overcome AI, How to Build a Secure Financial Future in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. The author is Scott Gamm and he joins me now. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Carrie. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So, Scott, what's the biggest takeaway you want people to have from this book? The title, Overcome AI, is a very triumphant, bold title.
Yeah, well, look, I think the takeaway is, we were taught, right, a lot of us in sort of traditional personal finance advice that, as long as you save a little bit of your income over 40 or 50 years, you'll have enough money to retire. But that comes with a big assumption that you'll have 40 or 50 years of sort of working life to be able to make money to save for retirement. And I think in the book, the main takeaway is don't necessarily assume that you're going to have that many decades to save for retirement, because artificial intelligence may be a big threat to jobs, and we don't know what the sort of future of work looks like. So I think people should be kind of truncating the timeline that they think they'll have to save for retirement. And so with that, you have to save even more money per year for retirement, because if you have fewer years to save for retirement, well, you're going to have to raise the amount of money you're saving each year in order to make up for that gap. And the book is largely more of a personal finance book, how to achieve financial independence, than it is an artificial intelligence book, although we do talk a lot in the book about AI, what some of the most well-known thought leaders and business experts around the world are saying about AI, and how to merge that thinking with your personal finances.
Okay, so let me help me understand this, because if you're telling me that AI is going to make us have fewer years of working, fewer years of getting income, that means we have to save more money. That begs the question, at least to me, wouldn't we have more benefits, or is life going to be easier because of AI? Does this mean we have to do fewer tasks? What are the perks of having AI in terms of the future, making life more livable when you're retiring?
Well, that's a great point. And look, I think, again, the answer is we don't know, because AI has such an uncertain future. And a lot of people have forecasts and predictions over how many jobs it's going to sort of kill and how many jobs it's going to create. And look, there will likely be jobs created out of the development of AI, right? I mean, that's capitalism. There are winners and losers in the economy. And you can go back hundreds of years and find examples of that. And we'll likely see that dynamic continue in what many are calling this fourth industrial revolution of artificial intelligence. But I think right now, folks who are lucky enough to have a job need to take a closer look at their finances and think about what they can do to secure their financial future, so that they don't have to rely on income from a job, and they have a nest egg of assets that actually produces sort of passive income for them that allows them to pay their bills. And now they're just sort of working because they like to work, not necessarily because they have to work. And I think the advice that we've been given over time of, save 10% of your income each year is a bit antiquated. And there are a host of stories of folks saving 50, 60, 70% of their income, building up that nest egg in a matter of, a few years instead of a few decades, and really being able to secure early retirement.
Well, and also if you're saving that much and then you've got AI extending your life, you just might need that extra money. Real quick, your book talks about what you call the artificial intelligence tax. What's that?
Well, that was just sort of a way to label how, the robots really will determine how much money we need to save. It was sort of a tongue-in-cheek kind of way to package this sort of personal finance information in the book. Essentially, we don't know how many years we're going to have to work, right? We don't know when artificial intelligence will displace our individual work, our individual job, or our sector. So it really is a matter of, well, how many years left do you have to work, and how much money can you save during that period? And that is sort of the determining factor in terms of how much money you'll need to retire. Whereas traditionally, we would always say, well, age 62 or age 65, that's retirement age. but that assumes that you'll have a job until then. And I think the takeaway in the book is just don't assume that you're going to be able to have a job for 40 or 50 years from now, right? You want to be thinking about sort of the what ifs. And I think this whole coronavirus moment of 2020 has really taught us to take a closer look at the tail risks out there, the what ifs in life, and plan for them accordingly.
Well, and it certainly had a lot of people question, am I essential? Am I non-essential? Lots of questions around that too. Real quick, this question of singularity, where AI is going to take over the human race or could supersede the controls that humans have put on AI. What's your read on that?
Well, look, it's a very interesting discussion. I try not to get too sort of speculative in the book. I'm very upfront in the book in saying that, look, we don't know what the future of AI holds. And obviously there are some extreme predictions and forecasts like the one you just mentioned. And there are ones that say, look, AI is only going to help things. We're going to have new industries created out of this. But I think that the takeaway is to plan for the downside, right? And look, whether your job is displaced by artificial intelligence or a routine layoff or an industry falling out of favor in favor of another industry, I mean, these are all sort of the equivalent risks because, whether your job is displaced by AI or something else, what does it matter to you? You're out of a job and you need to be able to still pay your bills. So yes, there's a wide range of sort of forecasts as to what AI might do to not just the economy, but to the economy globally.
All right, Scott Gamm, author of Overcome AI, we appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
And coming up next, a look at one of America's greatest cities being ripped apart from the inside. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss this. morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. So glad that you're here. We are going to turn to a section of this country that sadly has been torn apart by violence. It's Chicago. Now, a good friend of mine, Pastor Dimas Salaberios, is joining me here on set to talk about his new project. It's coming out next year. It's a documentary and it's called Chicago, America's Hidden War. Pastor Dimas, welcome.
Oh, so good to be here. Yeah.
So this film, it just couldn't come at a better time when we're seeing what's happening out of Chicago. I mean, some of the statistics that you guys shared with us, 5,000 gun-related deaths this decade. Every 3 hours, there's a new shooting in Chicago. I mean, this is war zone level violence.
It's even gotten worse. Now it's every 2 hours and 9 seconds or something like that. Somebody's being shot. So the coronavirus didn't help. I think it's even added on. Now you have everyone walking with masks and able to act more violently. And it was
it's harder to identify.
Yeah, it was already hard, but now everyone wearing a mask, I mean, it's gotten even worse.
Well, that was one of the things you said, only 5% of shootings are solved in Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, that just blows my mind. How does that compare with the rest of the country?
You do a shooting, I mean, just even their attitude, I think, towards shootings. Like in New York City, where I'm from, for example, if there's a shooting, very quickly, the police come in, they put up a tower, they light up the whole street for like 3 or 4 weeks. And, you know, there's lights there, there's people there. They just completely shut down whatever corner this happens at. In Chicago, there was a shooting. 2 guys laid there, died. We left, we came back. The blood's mopped up. Everything is cleaned up. The tape that was there is cut down and gone. And it's like business just moves on as usual. And I think when they move that fast, they don't give enough time to investigations. They don't give enough time to get details. And it's just a really, really sad situation on what's happening over there in that city. Yeah.
And when we're saying 5% solving rate of these shootings, and then you have folks coming, let's defund the police. What would that do to Chicago if they were to defund the police there?
You know, I think when I studied defunding the police, that was one of the big things. When I heard that, I was like, what are they talking about? And when I got further into just looking that up, it was more, I think they were talking about having more options on 911. Then you have some people that are far out there, like, we don't need police at all. I mean, that would be an absolute disaster, not only for Chicago, I think anywhere in the country, if you remove the police. So I don't want to see that happen anywhere. But I do think there is some wisdom to calling the cop to get a cat out of a tree, calling the cop to deal with every single situation. I think police have enough that they have to do, that they should just be more focused on the serious things. They should spread out some of the small issues to more help, like counselors or you know, different options. So I think that side is kind of wise, but I think just yelling defund the police is just, I mean, that just sounds so crazy. And that's why I had to read up on it. I was like, what are they talking about? That doesn't make sense to me. So, but I love the police. I care about the police, but they are totally overworked. And one of the big things you'll see in this film is I'm saying to Chicago, call in homicide from New York, call in homicide from LA. Can there be some kind of unification work going on to help solve some of these murders? Because it doesn't seem like Chicago can handle it on their own.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the film then, because what you do is you also look at heroes who are having success in combating violence, combating gang members, and helping them turn their lives around. How did you find them, and how do you tell their stories?
So one of the things that we did is I went down there and I went on a 40-day fast. So I didn't eat for 40 days, lost 35 pounds. It would be the smallest you ever seen me. And I started to connect with pastors and leaders and clergy, and then I started finding out who was doing the most on the ground. So this one name surfaced, the guy named Pastor Corey Brooks, who they called the rooftop pastor and the gangbanging pastor. So he's in the actual projects where Michelle Obama was born. It's called O Block. and he just reaches out to gang leaders, started working with them. He invited us. We had an exclusive interview, you'll see this in the film, into a gang meeting, a 3-generational gang meeting from the founders of the Disciples gangs and the Vice Lords, all these books I had to read when I was going to college, all these books, and then this younger generation, and then the young shooters are all in this one room, allowing us to have cameras while they talk about plans of how to deal with so many innocent people being shot, because they were even fed up with it. So this film will blow your mind into the access that we were able to get in there, and nobody has blurred out faces and no one's talking in the dark. These are guys just expressing what it's like to live through this situation. Many times we were almost shot out there as well. So it is something to be seen, and that's how we were able to connect with more and more leaders of gangs and begin to hear their stories and the life that many of them are living through.
And so when is it coming out?
So it comes out Martin Luther King weekend, as long as movie theaters are open around the nation. But so January 15th, 2021, we just expect people to come in and see it and be really, really blown away and see some solutions. And there's a lot of hope in the movie as well. So it's not just a downer. You get to see what it looks like when guys are coming in, turning in their guns, turning in their weapons over the impact of being loved on from people from all over the nation. Yeah.
Wow. Pastor, stick with us. We got you right after the break.
Okay.
All right, stick with us, folks. More with Pastor Demas when we come back about how to solve the violence in Chicago. Hey there, welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield and glad you've been here for the ride with us. To close, we've got Pastor Dimas Salaberios here still with us after the break. And he's working on a documentary about Chicago and how the violence there, it's incredibly heartbreaking, but he's also seeing stories of hope. Pastor Dimas, give us some hope here. How did you see people turn their lives? What you said it was people who felt love.
Yeah.
How specifically were they loved?
So I called around the country and called in friends to come and help us in Chicago. So Willie from Duck Dynasty flew in. Rose Simmons, survivor of the Manual 9, flew in. People came in from all around the nation to walk around and talk and love these guys on the corners. And many of them, over a period of a week or two, started saying, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. So one guy turns in this big machine gun that he hands in to one of the pastors down there. People were doing outside baptisms where people were saying, look, I just want a new life. And Donna preacher R.W. Shambach set up a big tent and people were coming out for that. There were marches that were going on all through the streets. We showed so much love to that city. And when you see that element take place and all these young men turn their lives around, it is one of the most beautiful things you'll ever see on film in a movie. And for it to be reality and not just actors, it makes it even more beautiful and spectacular.
Pastor Dimas, that gives us some hope. We're going to end the show on that note. Thank you all for spending your morning with us. We will see you tomorrow.